Hello and welcome. I am thrilled to be here to moderate a women's roundtable discussion. I have two wonderful guests alongside me. I'm going to be the moderator tonight. My name's Alison Early. I am a cataract and refractive surgeon. I'm in my fifth year of practice at Cincinnati Eye Institute in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I would like to welcome Doctors Jessica Duddleston and Linda Greff. If each of you want to give us a little bit about yourself, we'll just get started there.
Sure. I'm Dr. Jessica Duddleston. I'm so honored to be here. And I'm in my first year of practice as a cataract and refractive surgeon. Graduated from residency this past July at University of North Carolina, and now in practice at Alabama Vision Center in Birmingham, Alabama.
Hi, and I'm thrilled to be here as well because it's a great topic to start talking about more and more. My name is Dr. Linda Greff, and I have joined Cincinnati Eye Institute in 1991. So I have kind of the older perspective. And when I came, I was really the first practicing, well, the only female surgeon at the time. We had one before me that had left, and so I was kind of just starting, and now it's just wonderful to see how much the whole practice has blossomed.
Linda, I think it's going to be really interesting for both of us and all of the audience to hear a lot about your career. So I'm sure things have changed a lot and you're no longer the only woman at our practice, but I'm sure that was quite an interesting experience back in the early days when it was just you and a bunch of guys. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. So can you tell us what inspired you to pursue a career in ophthalmology?
Jessica, you want to?
Yeah, I can start. During my gap year before I went to medical school, I had graduated with a degree in biomedical engineering and thought that was really what I wanted to do, but I ended up deciding medicine. And during medical school, I shadowed my mom's ophthalmologist, actually. He had encouraged me to consider ophthalmology, and I got to see him do a corneal transplant, which was amazing to see. And it just inspired me and really had me considering ophthalmology from that standpoint, and learned more and more how I could use my biomedical engineering background with all the new technology that was coming out in ophthalmology and how to incorporate that into medicine. So I really felt like it was kind of the sweet marriage of the two for me, and haven't looked back. So it's been great.
Yeah, I will say that when I was in medical school, I really loved surgery and how that could help our patients. And I was very excited about it. But, in the beginning, we were fortunate to have a unit in ophthalmology, which a lot of medical schools don't even have. It was a short unit, it was about 2 weeks. But it sort of struck me as, wow, this is really an interesting field. And especially there were lots of fun toys. But the most important thing was that I was really impressed that it involved quality of life for our patients. When I was toward the end of medical school, I was really interested in both neurology and peripheral vascular surgery. And I came to realize that most people would probably rather lose an arm than lose their eyesight. And that really excited me, that we could really affect quality of life of our patients. And then actually in glaucoma, I ended up going to glaucoma, one, because of a wonderful mentor, which we can talk about later, but also because I love the chronicity of it. And I can say that I really know my patients better than a lot of their PCPs know their patients. I spend lots of time with them over the years and really get to know them. And that's also really attractive to me.
I think both of those stories are great. I have so many similarities to both of those things. I remember shadowing an ophthalmologist when I was in high school. I had come into contact with him because I got a corneal abrasion and he knew I was interested in pursuing medicine. So he was telling me what a great field it is. And then when I was in medical school, the first real exposure I had to ophthalmology was seeing a video of a cataract surgery, and it was Bobby Osher who showed it. And there's not really a better way to enter into the idea of cataract surgery than to see a video of Bobby Osher. Um, but I thought, how amazing is that to be able to really profoundly change somebody's life in 15 or 20 minutes. So that really piqued my interest. And then similarly, I had a 2-week rotation as a third year med student. And Linda, I'm sure you would not remember, but I did come to clinic with you. And I actually remember that one of your kids was sick and was like, had to come to the office that day and hang out because he couldn't go to school. So I'm sure you have no recollection
What
of
a great
that.
memory.
But I remember really being impressed on that rotation, that you and several of the other docs made a point to say how much they love their job and they love what they do, and really encouraged me to pursue it. Whereas some of the other specialties that I had been exposed to, people seemed a little more jaded and not really, wanting to push people in that direction necessarily. But I felt that tone was so much different when I was exposed to the ophthalmologists that I shadowed early on. So that was impactful, even though it was probably like a really stressful day for you 10 or 12 years ago. But now, full circle. So I think it's really interesting looking at how things have changed over the years. There are a lot more women in medical school and in ophthalmology, but still not quite half. It's still a little bit male dominated. Are there any reasons that the two of you can think of that might be limiting women going into ophthalmology, or what might encourage more women to go into this field?
You're right about there's many more medical students. I mean, when I was in medical school, it was about 28% female. Now it's almost, parity. But it's somewhere around 18% of the department heads in medical schools are women. And I think one example is you see us and you can be us. And I think that women need a lot more examples of what leadership in medicine can look like, and then utilize those examples and those mentors to discuss with them about their career objectives. So if you don't have women in high leadership places, they're not going to be encouraging women to go into fields that they're aware of and to open up their minds. I think that the more we can present to medical students, and even before then, that women can go into wonderful leadership positions. They can be the innovators. They can do all sorts of wonderful things. That's so important to get more women in there. I mean, and we're beginning to do that. You have certainly networking groups like, women in ophthalmology, but now you're having things like there's the Women in Medicine Summit that's going to be in Chicago in September. There's the top ophthalmologists that were all the top 50 women in ophthalmology was in one of the journals, The Ophthalmologist. That was so exciting to see because it's just inspiring. And you read each of their stories, and as a young budding medical student or ophthalmologist, you're going to see that and be inspired. And I don't know how, Jessica, you're probably exposed to so many of those examples of women that can do what you would like to see do. And that must really have made a difference in what you think you can accomplish.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just as you were talking, I was thinking of my chair of ophthalmology department when I was in medical school was female,
Mhm.
which is very rare, even now. And I looked up the statistic, and it's 10% of ophthalmology department chairs are female. So, we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go still. But she really meant a lot to me, just being female, and I could relate to her. She was approachable. I knew that this was something that I could do. She had a family, she had kids, her husband was in medicine, and I knew my husband at the time was going to go into medicine too. So, yes, I think it speaks volumes to see another female ahead of you doing the things that you want to do. And it just reassures you
Hmm.
that this is possible.
As women, there's definitely unique challenges that we encounter throughout training, both professionally and personally. A lot of medical training takes place in your 20s and early 30s, which is for many women the same time that you're starting to think about family and where you want to live and what your life is going to look like down the road. So I know that was challenging for me to navigate. My husband is a physician as well. And we went through about 6 years of living together and apart and together and apart during our training. And that impacted us in terms of when we could try to start a family. And the job search was a challenge because he was finishing training 1 year before me. So he had to look for jobs, and I had to sort of hope I could find one in the same place. So I think each step along the way, there have been a lot of challenges really navigating and figuring out where to go with my career. So, um, Linda, anything that jumps out at you as a unique challenge that you faced or something that you've overcome through your career?
Well, I was pretty impressed by most of my colleagues were really right on it and really helpful. I was fortunate not to really come across a lot of bad stuff. There were some, I mean, there's some kind of amusing when I look back on it. I mean, when I first came, there weren't many females. It was sort of like an expectation that you assimilate into the male kind of culture and be a team player, not be too loud or heard. And I actually had the head of our organization at the time come up and tell me that one of my male colleagues had asked if I not wear such short skirts. And I thought that was okay, all right. And then staff loyalty was kind of like they wanted to have a male doctor and a female doctor they weren't quite ready to be
Mm-hmm.
real loyal about. But it's mostly like you were talking about the pregnancy and when you take time off and have your family. And I have to say that in Cincinnati, that my partners were really wonderful. I mean, they stepped up. I had to go on bed rest for a few months, and they stepped right up and took my call and everything. So it really was quite a pleasant experience. I'm sure that's not true everywhere, but we were pretty lucky at our group.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear. Jessica, we were just kind of talking about some of the challenges maybe that we've faced in our careers at any stage. There's a number of things that are oftentimes unique to women. What you just said, Linda, was reminding me of an encounter I had just not long ago, but with kind of a older gentleman in ophthalmology. And I bumped into him at a meeting, and he was asking how I'm doing and how are my kids and how many do I have now? And I said, I have three. And he said, oh, are you planning to have any more? And I said, no, I don't think so. I think we're done. And he said, well, that's good because we already have an overpopulated planet and we're running out of water. And I was like, oh my goodness. that wasn't the response I was expecting. Usually people say, "Oh, that's good. You're happy with your family, how they are," kind of thing. But by and large, I totally agree. I think people around me have been really supportive of me having the children that I have, and my staff in my office will absolutely jump to it if I need to run out the door because I have to get somebody to the doctor or something like that, which knock on wood doesn't happen often. But as the mom, my preference is that I still am kind of the one that's interfacing with my childcare provider, and I still try to be as hands on as I can even when I'm at the office. So anyway, that's just a little anecdote. How about you, Jessica?
Yes, that's definitely something that's been on the forefront of my mind. I mean, being first year out of residency, I don't personally have any kids yet, but that is something that I am actively planning. And I joined a group with three male surgeons. So I'm the only female at my group. So that'll kind of be a new endeavor for the practice and how they will handle that if I'm lucky enough to have that, to have that option. But that's definitely something that was high up on my radar for contracts and is a delicate thing to bring up when that time comes and you are looking at the contract and wanting to add that in. I don't know how y'all dealt with that, or if that was something that was important to you at the time that you were signing contracts.
When I signed my contract, there was actually no maternity leave policy, which was a little bit of a shock when I heard that during my interview. But the case essentially was that it just hadn't come up. The practice had changed structure a little bit, I think, over the years, and essentially it just hadn't come up with the current practice structure. So, fortunately for me, in between the time that I interviewed and then the time that I actually started working and then later on had a child, there had been others that went before me. So there was a maternity leave policy by the time I needed it. But I think that's, like you said, it's a delicate thing to bring up, and there's some areas that you have to tread lightly, or especially the potential employer or interviewer has to be very careful with what they ask. But I do think that it's important if that's something that you're interested in, or even if you're not sure, but possibly thinking about having children in the future. I think it is really important to have something carved out because I have known of people who unfortunately have ended up in really difficult situations where they're still paying overhead when they're on leave and not bringing in any money, but then have to dig themselves out of a hole when they come back. So I think in 2023, practices need to be up to speed on at least having something on paper for sure.
And that's where also networking with other women that you know can be helpful because you don't have to always reinvent the wheel. And it might be harder in your situation because you're the only woman in the group. But perhaps as you grow or bring on other women, there can also be some problem solving, some creative ways of being able to take maternity leave and have others, cover for you or split time, just depending on what your wants are and how you want to do it, whether you want to take off completely, work part-time, full-time. But there can be some creative solutions by networking with others.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into the next topic that we wanted to cover with regard to mentorship. And I think that there's so many ways that you can find a mentor, and there's multiple different mentors that you can have in various areas of your life. We've talked about some of the places that we're now seeing women more prominent on the national and international scale in ophthalmology. The Academy president and one of our own eye care partners, physicians, Elizabeth Yu, is now the president of ASCRS. So we have some really amazing female leaders in the community. And I've been fortunate enough to really have some great mentors. Even just at this point in my career, I think I'm really leaning into some of the mentorship to figure out where I want to go with my career. But Jessica, can you tell us anything about how mentorship, either as a mentee or a mentor, has helped shape your career?
Yeah, so I kind of spoke about the first mentor that I had, which was the ophthalmology chair in Mississippi, which is where I did medical school. But then in residency, there was a female glaucoma surgeon, and she had done her fellowship at University of North Carolina and stayed on as faculty. And she was in her third or fourth year, and at this point, she had had 3 kids and a set of twins. Well, a set of twins within the three. And her husband was also a physician. And she really was a huge part of my residency and just encouraging me and like introduced me to MIGs. And I was able to use a lot of different MIGs during residency because of her. She was really open to trying new ones. Just seeing how she kind of juggled everything was really encouraging to me as a resident.
That's awesome. What about you, Linda?
I had some wonderful mentors that they were men. I had Paul Weber during my residency, who was just a fabulous glaucoma specialist. And I think if he was a retina specialist, I would have gone into retina. I mean, it's really whatever he did, I wanted to do, but really open. And it doesn't have to be a woman in terms of the things that you face as a young physician. And what I loved about him was just his honesty, his communication skills, and his caring for his residents and his patients. And he would talk about his family too. And then I had, of course, my uncle was an ophthalmologist and supportive parents. So those were really my mentors during that process, but really meant a lot to me and something I wanted to aspire to.
I love how you said that. I was thinking similarly that a lot of my really meaningful mentors have been men. So my career path, I sort of knew I wanted to be a doctor from a young age, and I ended up in an 8-year bachelor's and MD program. And I knew what the criteria were for me to have to matriculate to medical school. And so it was great in a lot of ways, but I think one way that I could have done more is that I didn't really seek out a lot of mentorship during my undergraduate years because I kind of knew what my next step was going to be already. And then similarly in medical school, once I had decided what my plan was for residency, I had some interactions with mentors through that process. But earlier in, undergrad, med school, residency, it was a very linear path, and I knew what I had to do to get to the next step and things like that. So I'm actually finding now, again, 5 years into my career, that I've really been seeking out mentorship in a much different way because now is the first time that it's all sort of open ended. What do I want my career to look like? What do I want to do in my career? And how can I make that happen? So I've been really fortunate in the last couple of years to make some great connections with mentors, both male and female, um, all over the place in different practices and different types of practice settings. And I've been able to visit people's practices to see how they do things. And it's really wonderful to be able to connect with people who are willing to share their time and their knowledge with me. So I would definitely encourage people, even if you've already sort of made it and are through training, there's still a huge role for mentorship. And then hopefully I can turn around and provide some of that to people who are a little bit behind me in their careers.
Well said. And I think that ECP really is starting a mentorship program, which is just fantastic. And, the other point to remember is that as we become mentors, we learn so much from those that we are mentoring. And, with all these fresh thinking, fresh training. I mean, Jessica, you would inspire me just talking and hearing the new approaches that you're having both professionally and personally. It's growth for it's a win-win situation.
No, that's good to hear. I think too, being asked who your mentors are in the past, I've kind of put that in more of a concrete question in the past, like have you signed a contract with someone and they are your mentor? But it's much more fluid than that. And just hearing Alison talk about like reaching out to people who inspire you, or you're interested in emulating in some way, I think that really is so important, because just like we are all willing to share what we've learned to people behind us, there are people out there that want to share those things, and it's just finding them so that you can make that connection.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think kind of paying it forward and remembering that you can pass on the things that you've learned from other people who have shared that with you. Definitely. So, do either of you have any great pearls of advice for women who are starting out in the field, whether they are about to apply to residency or maybe in residency or fellowship or early career?
I really liked the advice that my department chair from UNC gave me, Dr. Don Boudins. As I was graduating, I went to Ghana with him for an ophthalmology missions trip. And while we were there, he said, really the biggest reward that he's gotten from his career has been giving back to the field of ophthalmology, because it has given you so much and it will continue to give you so much, whether that's, the joy of accomplishment or just like a comfortable life and connections to fellow ophthalmologists. And there's just so many ways that we can give back. And I look forward to doing that. I thought that was really good advice. And I'm in the very beginning of this. So that's something I look forward to.
That was great advice that he gave you. And I would build on that and say, do what gives you joy. You're already in a field that you obviously liked and pursued and worked hard to get into. But as you progress in your career, keep an open mind to what others might present to you or subjects. So that gave you joy of giving back, and you enjoyed that trip that you did with him. And you might find some other opportunities as you are in your practice, even in private practice, to do that, whether it's going on Orbis later or seeing what others are doing on their mission trips. So find what gives you joy and pursue that. You'll be happy and you'll be good at what you do. I would also add more specifics for somebody new in practice is seek out the mentorship, observe a lot in the operating rooms, teach when you can if you're interested in that. And that means, lectures, whether it's to the public or to medical students or residents, have them in your clinic. That gives you, an opening to more opportunities. Think about research opportunities if you're interested in that. It's not too late to start doing that, whether it's clinical or bench. You can be involved in studies. You can become a PI. Those are always very helpful. And, think about joining committees, whether they be in your practice or on a regional or national level. There are also lots of different organizations that are in the community that you might want to be involved with. Here in Ohio, we have Prevent Blindness Ohio, and they have a wonderful scholarship program for female vision scientists. So there's just so many opportunities that you can plug yourself into if that's what you want to do to expand your career opportunities. And then I would say lastly to, bring your authentic self. And I guess that comes from the history of in the beginning when you wanted to assimilate and look more like the male leadership or your colleagues. And that's just not necessary anymore. And it's so refreshing to see, the young ophthalmologists such as you, Alison, and you, Jessica, just coming in and being your authentic self. And as females, we have a very unique perspective that we bring to the table. And we can be great listeners, communicators, problem solvers. And that's really something that can make you a special physician. And you shouldn't try to apologize for yourself. Speak up for yourself and be who you want to be, would be the best advice that I could give.
I think that's all fantastic advice. I hardly have anything to add. My bit of advice was going to be to put yourself out there and say yes. When opportunities come up, you never know what will come from that. So it's a very small world of ophthalmology and everybody knows everybody. So if you say yes to something on the local or regional level, it might put you in a position to do some really exciting stuff by who you meet. And so I think just not letting yourself get bogged down by imposter syndrome and knowing that you've earned where you are, and say yes when opportunities come up, and you'll be amazed what that leads to. So, well, thank you, ladies. It's been great talking to you and getting to know both of you a little bit and your stories. And I'm sure you're both taking wonderful care of your patients. And we thank you for being on tonight.